In this episode, we're going to need to do a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a lot of that, a little bit of this, and a little bit of this to make that. I'm going to have to do this in 2 videos, but it'll be well worth it in the end. So stick around and hopefully enjoy. Hi, I'm Larry. This is my channel, Miller's Rods and Mods. I'm just your average guy that works on anything and everything, big or small, from custom fabrication to routine maintenance. In the process, my family and I do our best to have a little fun. As I learn to perfect my skills, follow along and enjoy. We're going to do something a little different this week. Valentine's is coming up, and if you're a fabricator and you're like me, you more or less want to make something. You don't want to buy something, because most of the stuff you buy is so chintzy anyway. My wife she likes the tree of life, and so we're going to try and make a 3D sculpture of that with a flat piece of sheet metal. It ought to be fun, so follow along, hopefully enjoy, and hopefully at the end it'll look something like that. We're going to take this piece of sheet metal and we're going to sculpt it into something unique and different as a present for Valentine's Day. So let me show you what we got going on here. So I have 3 different drawings here. This one was the first draft. Not very good, but it was kind of like trying to get the lines of a tree and what we were looking to do and what shape we wanted. So you all can laugh at that one, because I did too. And then this one here, this looked pretty good, and I liked it. Nicole liked it as well, but she wanted more of a weeping willow, so she wanted the branches to come down and around, kind of in a circular motion, and then the roots to go up, which we've seen a lot of sculptures of the tree of life, and that's what it looks like. So we're going to go with this design here, and what we're going to do is basically cut all this out. We're going to mark it, draw it on this big piece of steel that's behind these papers, and then we're going to cut it out probably with a plasma cutter. We're going to cut mainly the trunk and some of the branches. Now the thinner parts here, I think we're going to do them out of round stock, and then we'll cut all the leaves individually. And then I think the roots as well will be round stock as well. But we're going to do our best to make this more or less 3-dimensional, which will add to the effect of it. So follow along with the process. I haven't done this before, so it'll be a learning experience as usual, and we'll see what we come up with. Here we found the center of this panel that we previously cut out. What we're going to do is drill center hole. And then after we have the hole drilled, we're going to take that drill bit out of the chuck of the drill itself, and we're going to tie a string to it. Alright, so what we did here is we tied a piece of string, or what I could find, to the drill bit. Now, I want to mention the drill bit. I have a piece of wood underneath this piece of steel, and if you don't care about that piece of wood, you can drill right through the piece of wood, and it'll keep this drill bit from like falling over. So it won't be, let's see here, it won't do this number or that number while you're trying to make your circle. It'll keep it stable. So that's one thing. Then you take your string and you tie it to whatever pen you're going to use. And then you measure your drill bit to the end of the string, and if I suggest you keep it a little long, how long you like where you do the knot, and you can always shorten it. You just grab a hold of it and you just turn the marker, and then that'll shorten your length up. All right, so now that you have your length, I'll take the cap off and double check your length. Oh, there's the cap. So there we are. So we're just going to do a big circle. Like that. And now we have a reference on like where to make our image. If it's too far over this way, too far over that way, it's going to look odd. So this gives us a really good starting point, and then we can if you want to measure from the center of your tree, and I mean, there's lots of different ways you can do this, but this is pretty much a basic way to get you started, get you in the right direction, so that your picture doesn't look weird. So, okay, on our picture, we have our roots down here. So what we're gonna try and duplicate this. So if you imagine your circle is like this, so you want to leave room in your circle for these roots. So what we're going to do is like draw an imaginary line. I can do it with my finger, and the grease kind of shows you where it is. But we're literally going to, on the steel panel, we're going to take our finger across so that we know to start the trunk up a little bit higher than on the bottom. That way we have roots. I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but basically what it is, it took my finger and literally went across the panel like this. And you can see the grease coating or whatever. So we want to start our trunk from this point up, and then we'll go from there. Got the overall design drawn out. It took a little little refining. I tried it a couple times on here. It's one thing to go from paper to something a little bit bigger here, but it looks pretty nice. And my biggest thing is to not make it look like a bush. Make sure it looks like a tree. But yeah, so basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut the trunk. So basically along these lines here, that's what we're going to do. We drew the leaves and the twigs that we'll use round stock to create. So anything that's like a single line coming out, that's going to be a twig or a branch off the original trunk. But we're going to cut the outline here, all around here for the trunk, and then we'll metal shape all that. But it helped to give kind of an idea of what it's going to look like with the leaves, so that's why we drew all that, of course. Another thing that helps you when you do the center line, obviously helps you to get the tree look somewhat centered in your circle that you're trying to create here, but also gives you a depth for your leaves. So you want to keep your leaves, you don't want them all perfect because no tree is the same, but you don't want like one way down here and then you go over the other side and it's like up 6 inches off of that, so it kind of keeps everything close. So yeah, so we're gonna get the plasma cutter out. Like I said, we're gonna cut this main shape out, and then we'll get to metal shaping. I'm not sure. I might keep this bottom part, and we might try something with that rather than cut it off right away. Maybe I'll just keep it to have something to clamp onto as well. Here we tried this tree trunk one more time. Wasn't happy with the original. Wasn't happy with the second one I did, and so I tried it one more time. So I didn't do the leaves on this one, but I like the overall shape of it. It's kind of difficult to see, but it's more simple. We can add more like smaller branches to it, more leaves, and the trunk's a little bit longer. So I moved. Originally, I think I had the bottom of the trunk about here. Yeah, you can see it right there. There's the line. So I moved the bottom of the trunk down here, and I may move this part of the trunk down, but I think the other ones are a little too precise, and no tree is perfect. They're all different, and the way this trunk turned out is more, it replicates this picture that I drew earlier that we liked a lot better. So I think we got it. I think we're going to move forward. The next step is I'm going to take a piece of rod and make it the circumference of the circle, so we have something to kind of like weld this tree trunk to later on. It keeps its shape, and also maybe something to use to hang it on the wall. So yeah, it's coming along, but sometimes you have to try a couple times to get it right. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to fail. You learn every time you fail. So we'll work on this ring here and keep on moving. Now you can kind of see the circle a little better, and the trunk. I think up when I had it up higher, you couldn't see it as well because of the light. But I think this is going to work out a little better the way this is shaped, and obviously it doesn't have leaves painted on it and stuff like that. So when we add all that stuff, it's going to look a ton better. But I think the trunk needed to be a little more simple than it was, and a shape that wasn't uniform. Needed to be, you know, trees are different. Every one of them is different. So I didn't want it to look like a picture perfect tree, and I think we hit it. So I'm gonna cut this ring to length, and we'll have that later for when we need to weld it. As you can see, we got the base of the tree cut out, the trunk anyway. Don't worry about the excess that we cut off, because we're going to use that later for the leaves. I was going to use a plasma cutter to cut this out, but I thought I'm going to give this electric shear a try. I bought it used from a guy. I wasn't sure if it'd work, but it works pretty good. A lot better than what a plasma cutter would have done, because it would have probably just made a mess of everything. So if you don't have electric shears, they're a handy tool to have, that's for sure. So even the old ones, obviously. Alright, so now it's time to give this tree trunk some shape. So we're going to take that piece of steel, and it's shaped like a tree, obviously, and we're going to put it on this sandbag. This is a leather bag filled with sand, and we're going to use this mallet and kind of give this some shape. So we're going to flip it around and just kind of, you know, try to make it look more three-dimensional. As I'm doing it, I'll try and explain what I'm doing exactly, but it's mainly trial and error, so we'll see how it goes. Alright, now we're at the point where we're going to try and give this some shape. So we're going to use this mallet, and we're going to start hitting it, and we're just trying to make the trunk round, you know, give it some, make it look three-dimensional. So I'm hitting it on a sandbag, which will allow it to take the impact, you know, as I'm hitting it. Okay, we stretch the trunk. We're hitting it in the center here, and then it stretches out, makes it round, right? So we did a little bit of that with the branches here, but we need to do a little bit more. So in order to help me with the shaping of that, I have this piece of cast iron anvil, basically, and it has all kinds of different shapes and contours on it. So you just put the metal up against that and then hit it in the form, and then it'll round it. So it's already done some of the branches here and right here. So I got to do the top two, and we might do some with the trunk to kind of, what I want to do is I want this to bulge out, so round like this, and then the back get kind of flat. So that way it's not like, it'll make it look three-dimensional, but the piece itself will be flat. So I'm going to use this, I think, to accomplish that. Here's this anvil that I'm using, a little bit closer view. It's got all kinds of shapes on it. But I'm using this one here. I'm taking the piece and I just stick it down in there and then hit it with a hammer, and it rounds it over very nicely. Okay, so it's starting to take shape here. It's got too much curvature this way, so I need to flatten it out. And not exactly sure how to do that. I think we're going to do some shrinking in some of the areas, and hopefully that'll help it flatten it out some. I like the curvature in here, but I need it to sit a little flatter. It's too much, bulging out too much. So we're going to try that here in a second and see how that works out. I wanted to demonstrate, I figured out how to make this not so much of a curve, kind of flatten it out some. So basically what I did was I took the piece of sheet metal and I stuck it in here. And this is what you call it has jaws in it, and it's a stretcher. So what it actually does is it pulls the metal apart like this. Now this one over here is a shrinker, and it'll actually push the metal. It has jaws in there, and it'll literally push the metal together. But in these jaws, it pulls it apart. When it pulls it apart, it has this curve here, and it's going like this. Well, when you pull the metal apart, it makes the metal want to flatten back out again. And so I only had to hit it a couple times there, and you just push down on this handle, and then it help flatten it out some. Now, I didn't get it perfect, but I don't think most of this project isn't like perfect, but it's just more or less for the effect. But so there's like a kink here, and there's a couple other kinks, where I had to actually bend the metal. I had to sit it down flat, and a couple times I stepped on it, or bent it with my hands or whatever. But overall, it's pretty flat, so it ought to work for what we're doing. And the main idea is I want to hang this on the wall, and if I have it hang on the wall, I don't want it to be like, like a semicircle sticking out that we're like hitting our head or something on it. So I wanted to keep it somewhat flat. I wanted to elaborate a little bit on the stretching process and kind of explain why I need to stretch the edges of the metal. Okay. So I have a piece of panel here. I'm going to try and explain this in more thorough detail so that everyone can understand it. All right, I have this scrap piece of panel here. what I did was I took a black magic marker and I colored two ends, this one and this end, and then I scribed a line right down through the center of each of those, and from this line to that line it measures 12 inches exactly on this side, center, and the middle. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stretch the metal by hitting it on the sandbag here, and we're going to come back and see if it's the same measurement or not. Now that we stretched this panel using the sandbag, I want to show you a little more about what it's doing. Okay, so all these bumps in here are stretching the metal, kind of like Play-Doh. You know, if you push a finger into it, it'll start stretching in the center. And what that does here is it will literally make this piece of metal, if you took this piece of metal and you put it flat, which later we can do, it would actually, we're going to measure it, but it's longer here than it is on the outside edges because we stretched it. So originally this is 12 inches, and we're going to take the tape measure and as precise as we can. I mean, I know it's not, you know, perfectly precise here. You can see over here at this end that it's 12 1/4. I know my tape measure is not the greatest, but this is 12 here, and that's 12 1/4. So we stretch the center of this panel a full 1/4 of an inch by just doing that. The edges are still 12 inches if you go over and measure these. You can see that one's 12 inches right there, and the other one's a little distorted, but it's 12 inches there as well. It's right there. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to lengthen the edges of this metal and it will flatten it out. So you just stick them in these jaws. Sometimes they're a real pain to get it in there. You literally just push down like so. So as we stretch this metal, we made technically this part of the metal longer and this part of the metal longer. You can see how it lays down a lot flatter. Now it's not perfect the way it is, and when it gets those like creases, you've seen like some of these, when you hit them with a mallet like that, in a sense that's also doing the same thing. It is stretching the metal. There's one here, if I'd hit that, it'll also stretch it, and it allows the metal to lay flatter. So that's what I was doing in a sense with the tree, was I still wanted to have this curvature here, but I wanted it to lay flat, so instead of it being like a hump, you know. So that, hopefully that explains what the metal's doing. So you're stretching here, and these two edges here are not being stretched originally. And so it tightens it up and makes it curl. And then when you stretch the outer parts here, then it makes it the same length, and then it wants to lay flat. So hopefully that's a really good explanation visually, because it's kind of hard to explain without having something to go off of. So yeah, hopefully that helps. I think that's enough work in this episode. It's getting a little long, so we're going to break it up into 2 episodes. Tune in for the next episode, episode 2, for all the finishing touches and all the little tidbits, little details. Yes, you can see this in the thumbnail of this video, and yes, you can see it in the beginning of the video, but there might be a few little extra things that I do just to kind of make it even a little more unique. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, please comment below, like, subscribe, also share with your friends, and tune in for part 2. We'll see you on the next one.